drugs, guns, and money.
Okay, that'll take us to the second topic that we wanted to get into. That is Earl Thomas. And Earl Thomas is making, we'll say, headlines for the wrong type of reasons for the second time in, I think, since COVID. The first time you might have heard Earl Thomas's name, we'll try to keep this PC, but Earl Thomas was involved in a we'll say a bizarre incident involving his brother, a female, and something going on in a bedroom. You can use your imagination, but the police were called because we'll say somebody walked in on this thing happening. So yeah, that's the first Earl Thomas news we heard. Earl Thomas is obviously a fantastic football player for the Seattle Seahawks for many years, now with the Ravens. And now Earl Thomas came across our Twitter feeds once again because the Ravens have, by all indications, said that they are moving on from the Earl Thomas era, which was very short-lived. So, when I see the word conduct detrimental, of course, Dan, I think of this podcast. And then, Dan, when I see that potential millions in guaranteed money might be lost because of the terminology in this personal conduct detrimental clause, then I know it's going to be a topic on the show. And wouldn't you know, Dan, I have my own predictions. I predicted this was going to be on, and guess what? I am right. Dan, what do you have to say on this Earl Thomas issue?
Well, I mean, your prediction actually has to be on a prior episode in order for it to count.
That's not true. That's nowhere in our bylaws, Dan. That's not really that fair.
Well, in many ways, this is like an Antonio Brown case, but without the signing bonus, which does, raise a lot of questions. Earl Thomas got into a fist fight with one of his teammates, and I would think that the Baltimore Ravens aren't going to base a conduct detrimental termination without pay on just simply a training camp fist fight, because anyone who's a fan of the National Football League and follows training camp for all of their teams knows that fist fights in training camp are a rite of passage. So they're going to try to portray him as a malcontent, somebody who was disruptive inside the locker room. And I think the posting of these or the practice tapes on his Instagram account might be the straw that breaks the camel's back, because if Earl Thomas had just stayed quiet and only gave the Ravens the fight and maybe some accusations that he's a malcontent, I don't think that would have been sufficient to constitute conduct detrimental under his standard player contract, because you need to have something a little bit more than just training camp fights. And he may have unwittingly rescued or just clutched defeat from the jaws of victory by posting those practice tape videos on his social media accounts. So what do you think about that? Do you think he's got a good case or a not so good case?
I mean, it's going to depend, at least in part, on what the Ravens' personal policy is. I can't imagine that. I mean, we don't see that many videos in-house from players, and I know that's, at least from what I knew with the Giants, it's very much looked down upon. So if the Ravens have a policy that says that you can't be sharing those types of materials,
do you need a policy? Do you really need a policy for that?
I mean, it's always, Dan, listen, you're calling me out on my prediction thing, which is not in writing, so I can make up the rules as I go. That's why you put things in writing. That's why you hire lawyers to write the policy for the team and what they can and can't do on campus. So to the extent that Earl Thomas potentially, put out a video that he wasn't supposed to, I mean, that's one thing. I mean, I've seen, in this past couple of years, there's videos taken in the locker room after games are over, and players might be caught cursing. And actually, you know what, Dan? I take one step back. It's actually an Antonio Brown thing I'm remembering. When he was with the Steelers, he recorded, I think he recorded Mike Tomlin in the locker room afterwards, and he got in trouble. So is it an offense that should get you kicked off the team? I'm not sure it should, but I will point out, Dan, I don't think it's a good look for Earl Thomas to be litigating this case on Instagram, just like he was trying to litigate these crazy allegations with his brother and the girls on Instagram. So I don't like it, just like, and we'll talk about with Katie Strang with Mike Bilberry. I don't know if this is just one incident. I don't think that's why the Ravens would be ready to cut bait with Earl Thomas, a fantastic talent, so quickly. I tend to think that this might be the accumulation of incidents that is leading to this.
Yeah, I think we've got to look at, and when we speak about Milbury, it does raise the questions of selective enforcement and past practices and how an employer has treated similar situations in the past with respect to other players. And I found something doing some of my research for tonight's broadcast. I was trying to gauge some of the fist fighting and some of the training camp fist fights that have occurred throughout the past few years of Ravens training camp. And there was like this all-out brawl in 2016, and John Harbaugh was interviewed by the news media in the aftermath of this big, spate of training camp fistfights. And he said, this is what it's all about. We've got a bunch of young guys that like to play and want to get after it and have a lot of pride. It's a tough game, and I did like the spirit and physicality. Well, how do you square those prior incidents and those comments? And how do you reconcile that with taking an adverse action against Earl Thomas today, based predominantly on a training camp fist fight? I think what the Ravens might actually try to do here is build a stronger case based upon some of these other factors I alluded to earlier. But if we're going to have equal justice and consistency with past practices, I think it's fair game to look at how similar situations were handled in the past. Not just the fist fights in prior years, but how the team dealt with Ray Rice initially by not taking any adverse action against him, and then only much later on doing so. So this may set up a very contentious grievous proceeding, but at the end, we're not talking about the bulk of the money under his contract. He signed a 4-year, $55 million deal, $32 million of which was guaranteed, but $20 million of that was in the form of a signing bonus. And even though that's allocated over 5 years and paid out over 4 years, 4 years, not 5 years, signing bonuses are deemed earned when the contract is signed. And under the collective bargaining agreement, there are only 4 circumstances under which a signing bonus, even an unpaid signing bonus, can be clawed back. That would be if a player holds out, he retires, he shoots himself in the leg like Plaxico Burress, or I forgot what the 4th one is, but conduct detrimental isn't one of the grounds for clawing back the signing bonus. So of his $55 million deal, $20 million is already earned. He made his $2 million in guarantees last year. So the only guaranteed portion that remains is the $10 million for 2020, because 21 and 22 are non-guaranteed years. So I think it's worth filing a grievance, and considering that he's made $22 million for 1 year's worth of work, when you assume that he's going to win on the signing bonus aspect of it, I don't think he has anything to lose, and he's in a pretty good position to win the case, and certainly to make up some of the lost earnings, maybe by signing with another team. But this is not a major dollar amount like the Antonio Brown case was. This is really about $10 million, which is roughly 18% or 17% of his total contract value.
I think it's a good place to end this, Dan. And obviously, we don't know everything yet on the Earl Thomas front, but if there is more, Dan and I will be updating you on that. So.